Hi, and welcome to the Sweet Spot of Life. I'm Yasmin, and if you're here, I have a feeling you might recognise this space. This podcast is for women whose lives look pretty good on paper. You've got kids, a career, responsibilities, and people who rely on you. You're capable, you're organised, you get things done. And yet, every now and then, there's this quiet feeling. Not dissatisfaction exactly, not ungratefulness, just a sense that there's more depth, more meaning, more truth, more you. That space right there is what I call the sweet spot of life. It's the space between being grateful for what you have and still wanting more for your life. And for a long time, I didn't know how to name that feeling. I just knew it kept showing up. Something that I've noticed, that this feeling, the one that says there's more, never shows up when life is loud. It doesn't come when you're rushing to work, answering messages, packing lunches, running from one thing to the next. It comes late at night, or in the car, or in the shower, or when everything finally goes quiet. And instead of excitement, it often brings guilt. Because how dare we want more, right? When our life is fine, when other people are struggling. But that quiet voice isn't asking you to leave everything behind. It's just asking you to listen. I'm 44 years old. I'm a wife and a mum of 2 kids, a 12-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. I run a very busy medical practice and also volunteer coach a boys' basketball team. I love watching basketball, having long conversations, and also possibly over a glass of rosé at the end of a big day. And like many women I know, I'm right in the middle of a full life, holding a lot, loving a lot, managing a lot, and still quietly asking some pretty big questions. On paper, my life looks solid. It's stable, responsible, successful even. But early last year, something shifted for me. I've been working in healthcare administration for approximately 25 years now. It's demanding, it's high pressure, and requires you to be on all the time. We are a 2-income household, which means I don't have the luxury of just walking away from a job or completely reinventing myself, even if part of me sometimes fantasizes about it. And then, because I really don't do things by halves either, I also added basketball coaching and volunteering at a basketball organisation into that mix, just because I have so much time. Somewhere along the way, I realised I was exhausted. Not just tired, but shattered. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. The kind where you keep going because you have to, not because you're not sure how much longer you can do it that way. I honestly didn't know how I made it through the end of last year, but I did. And now here I am in 2026, still asking the same questions, but finally feeling ready to sit with them instead of pushing them away. People love to say things to you like, just make some time for yourself. And every time I hear that, I think, how? Because time isn't just time. It comes with guilt. Wife guilt, mum guilt, work guilt. That constant feeling that if you stop, you're letting someone down. For me, the quiet moments usually come at night, just before sleep. The house is finally silent. Everyone else is done needing something from me. I lie in bed, put my AirPods in, scroll on Instagram or Facebook, or watching completely mindless trash TV. And honestly, I love it. Not because it's productive, not because it's quiet, but it's time for me. It's the only time my nervous system actually gets to exhale. Normally, it doesn't last very long. I might get about 5 minutes in and I'm just too tired, but it's just that time for me. During the day, I try so hard to be present with my kids and with my husband because I'm aware that work already takes up so much of me. But by the end of the day, I'm overstimulated. Sometimes I feel like one of those cartoon characters where the stars are spinning around their head. Got kids talking, husbands talking, TV's on. My brain is just done. And I know I'm not alone in that. This podcast I'm doing is not about blowing up your life. It's not about starting over. And it's definitely not about telling you to be grateful and stop wanting more. It's about holding both, about being grateful and curious, content and ambitious, grounded and still growing. For me, the sweet spot of life is where ambition, contentment, identity, and curiosity all meet. It's about living a life that isn't just full, but aligned. I think a lot of women don't actually feel lost. They feel unclaimed. Like parts of them were slowly put aside because they didn't fit into the season they were in. The curious part, the ambitious part, playful part, or even the part that wanted something just because it felt exciting. And no one tells you that when you ignore parts of yourself for long enough, you start to feel disconnected from your own life. If that's you, I want you to know nothing has gone wrong. You haven't missed your chance. You haven't wasted time. You've just outgrown the version of you that made sense back then. Let that breathe. We've been sold this idea that change has to be dramatic, that if something bigger is calling you, you need a big announcement, a huge leap, a total reinvention. But most real change starts quietly. It starts with curiosity, with journaling, with conversations that you've been avoiding, or with saying yes to the small thing that makes you feel like you again. This podcast exists in that space, the in-between, not where everything is falling apart, but where something new is asking to be built. In this podcast, sometimes it'll just be me, thinking out aloud like I am now, about motherhood, about leadership, burnout, joy, identity, intuition, and all those in-between moments we don't talk about enough. Other times, I'm hopeful that I'll be joined by women who are also navigating this middle space. Honestly, imperfectly, and thoughtfully. No experts, no gurus, just real women living lives and asking the same questions. Over the next coming episodes, I'll be chatting with everyday mums, professionals, and all-round amazing women, sharing their stories and perspectives. Not to give us answers, but to help ask better questions. Because I don't have the answers yet. And honestly, that's kind of the point. If you're listening to this while doing something for someone else, I see you. If you've been the reliable one, the capable one, and the strong one, I see you. And if nobody has asked you lately what you want, let this be a moment to ask yourself. Not what you should want, not what makes sense on paper, but what quietly lights you up. There's something else that I want to talk about, and I almost didn't include it because it feels vulnerable. And because I know how polished we can make our lives look, especially as women. For this podcast to mean anything, it has to be honest. For a long time, I told myself I was just tired, that this feeling would pass once things settled down. Once the kids got a bit older, once work was less demanding, Once the basketball season had ended, once this busy chapter was over. But the truth is, there's always another busy chapter. And at some point, I had to admit, this wasn't just exhaustion. It was misalignment. I was living a life that worked really well for everyone else, but parts of me were running on empty. There's a particular kind of burnout that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being needed too much. From always the fixer, the organizer, the emotional anchor, the one who holds it all together. And when you're that person for long enough, you start to forget what you need. Or worse, you convince yourself it doesn't matter. I became very good at functioning, at coping, at showing up. But I wasn't really checking in with myself anymore. And I know there are women listening right now who know exactly what I mean. What made this harder was that nothing was technically wrong. My marriage is solid, my kids are healthy and happy, my job's secure, I'm surrounded by really good people. So when I felt flat or restless or disconnected, I didn't feel entitled to talk about it. I told myself, oh, you should be grateful. Other people have got it worse. You're all right, just push through. But here's what I learned. Gratitude doesn't cancel out truth. You can be thankful and still feel unfulfilled. You can love your life and want to change how it feels. Those things are not opposites. Another thing we don't talk about enough is how much identity shifts in the seasons of our life. For years, my identity has been very clear. I was the worker, the provider, the mum, the dependable one. Those roles mattered. They still do. But somewhere along the way, I realized I hadn't asked myself a really simple question in a long time. Who am I becoming now? Not who I was, not who I needed to be for anyone else, but who I am now, at 44, in this body, this season, in this life. That question felt uncomfortable, but also incredibly alive. Starting this podcast wasn't a strategic move. It wasn't a business plan, and it wasn't even something I felt fully ready for. It is completely nerve-wracking to share all of this with you and to share how I've been feeling. But this was a response to that quiet voice that kept saying, pay attention. Say this out loud. Create a space for these conversations. This podcast is me choosing curiosity over numbing, connection over pretending, alignment over autopilot. And I want you to know you don't need to start a podcast to honor that voice within yourself. Sometimes honoring, it looks like saying no, or asking for help, or letting yourself rest without justifying it, or admitting you want something different for your life. If you're listening to this and thinking, I don't even know where to start, that is okay. You don't start with action. You start with awareness. Start by noticing what drains you, what energizes you, what you avoid, what you secretly crave. Those clues matter. Your discomfort isn't a problem to fix. It's information. This podcast will be a place where we can talk about what it really means to want more without guilt, how to rebuild identity after a burnout, why so many women feel disconnected, even in good lives, and how small, honest shifts can change everything. Not quickly, not dramatically, but sustainably. Because this season of life isn't about burning it all down. It's about coming home to yourself. So before I wrap up this first episode, I want to leave you with a few gentle questions. Not to answer right now, but just to hold. Where in your life are you functioning, but not feeling? What part of you has been quiet for too long? And what would it look like to listen without needing to act immediately? If any of those questions stir something in you, you're exactly where you're meant to be. And now, we come back to the sweet spot of life, the space between who you've been and who you're becoming, between gratitude and growth, stability and expansion, responsibility and desire. That's where this podcast lives. And if you're standing there too, I'm really glad we've found each other. This space is for women who are doing well at life, but still feel that nudge that something more is waiting for them. If that's you, I hope this feels like a space you can exhale. A space where you don't have to perform. A place where your questions are welcome. So if your life is full, but your inner world is so curious, you're in the right place. Welcome to the sweet spot of life. I'm really glad you're here. If you're navigating this middle space too, I'd love to hear from you. Your stories, your questions, the things you don't say aloud, they matter here. Some of them may become future episodes or questions, always shared with care and permission, of course. Before you go, I'll leave you with this. What part of your life looks good on the outside, but feels unfinished on the inside? That question is where our podcast begins. I'll be back in the next episode, and I'd really love for you to come back too. Until then, be gentle with yourself and pay attention to the quiet moments. They're usually trying to tell you something.